And I'm the founder of the Left-Handers International Organization, and I would be talking to you today about abuse and stigma. We started a series last week, and the series is titled What is Abuse and What are the Different Types of Abuse? So, throughout the month of January, we will talk about abuse, okay? We'll talk about abuse, and today is the second episode. So, today I'll be talking to you about the different types of abuse. So, let's do a quick recap of what we talked about the last time we met. The last time we met, which was last week Sunday, we talked about what abuse is. We talked about what abuse is, right? So today again, I will be doing a recap of what the different types of abuse are, what abuse is, and then the different types of abuse out there. Remember that when I talked last week, I said that abuse is any kind of behavior from anybody, that is any kind of behavior that anyone expresses in order to what control, manipulate, and reduce the self-esteem of another person. Any form of behavior, it can be physical, emotional, psychological, sexual, financial, whatever kind of behavior that someone else projects or performs or perpetrates in order to what control you, to have authority over you, to have access to you, or to make you do the things that you don't want to do. It is called abuse. Any kind of behavior whatsoever that someone expresses, that someone is, any behavior, let me not overemphasize that. So let's move on. The second thing I want to talk to you today about is the different types of abuse. What are the different types of abuse? Okay, there are several types of abuse out there. There is family abuse, there is family abuse or family violence, which of course we also known as domestic abuse or domestic violence. Now, don't make this mistake of thinking that domestic abuse is just a kind of abuse that is a type of violence between a man and his wife. Domestic abuse or family violence is not limited to intimate partner violence. Domestic abuse or violence is not limited to intimate partner violence. It is not only when your partner abuses you emotionally, psychologically, and otherwise that we say there is abuse. All right? It is not only when your partner abuses you physically, emotionally, and otherwise that we say that there is abuse. Awesome. So there are different types of abuse. Give me a moment. Let me sip some water, please. Give me some moment. Let me sip some water. Let's proceed. As I said, there are different types of abuse. Okay? As I said, there are different types of abuse. And when we talk about among the different types of abuse is family abuse. Family abuse or domestic violence is not the only form of abuse or violence that is out there. And when we say family abuse or domestic abuse, do not mistake that to be intimate partner violence alone. Intimate partner violence is one of the different forms of family abuse. Intimate partner violence is one of the different types of family abuse. All right. So, for instance, a partner is aggressive towards, his wife or a husband. That is intimate partner violence, right? That is a form of family violence or domestic violence. It is not the only form of. So we do not generalize by saying that. Um, let's see what is going on. The live video. We do not general. I'm trying to check something. We do not generalize by saying that the only form of abuse or violence out there is intimate partner violence, and we do not generalize by saying that intimate partner violence is the only kind of abuse that we can describe as domestic abuse or family violence. It is just one. Abusing a left-hander or telling a left-handed child to stop using the left hand, okay, is also a form of abuse, okay? Is also what? A form of abuse. It is one of the forms of abuse among several others. Let's move on to something else. Let's move on to something else, okay? Now, another kind of abuse that I think we all do not focus or pay attention to is what I call social network abuse. Social network abuse. Social network abuse is the type of abuse that, excuse me. Social network abuse, as I was saying, is the type of abuse that someone who that is very common, even more than family abuse, right? Social network abuse is the type of abuse, the type of control, the type of manipulative behavior that someone in your church, someone within your social network, say a friend, okay? The person is not family, the person is not your relative, the person is not your blood, but the person abuses you, gaslights you, and makes you think or feel less of yourself, okay? We can also call that a form of abuse. We can also call that what? A form of abuse. So what I'm saying in essence is there is family violence or family abuse. There is social network abuse. The type of behavior, the type of manipulative behavior, the type of control that someone within, your social network expresses, to in order to gain control, in order to gain authority over you. Social network abuse is not the same as family abuse. Family abuse relates to the kind of abuse or behavior that comes from people within your family. Social network abuse is the type of abuse or behavior that comes from people who are not from your family but who are close to you or who are your friends. Now, the third one, which is very common, is religious abuse. Religious abuse. Religious abuse. The second kind of abuse, which is equally common, is what? Religious abuse. Religious abuse. Religious abuse is the type of abuse that comes from religious leaders or spiritual fathers or mothers or people who generally occupy positions of power or positions of religious authority or who have religious authority and who people listen to. So today we've talked about the different types of abuse, right? I did a recap of what abuse is by saying to you that abuse is any form of behavior that someone uses to assert control, authority, or manipulate another individual. And I said that why we believe that the general kind of abuse is physical abuse, why in our subconscious we think that the only form of abuse there is physical abuse. I said to you that there are several kinds of abuse. It is not only physical, there is emotional, psychological. there are other kinds of abuse. And in addition to that, I said that there are different, to break things down even further, I said that abuse takes place in different places and in different forms. I said abuse takes place within the family, and this is also known as domestic abuse or domestic or family violence or family domestic violence or family violence. Okay. And again, do not make the mistake of generalizing and thinking that the only kind of abuse that we call domestic violence is when a husband hits his wife or when a wife hits her husband. That is not the only form of domestic violence. Stigmatizing a left-handed child and discriminating left-handed people is a form of family violence, is a form of domestic violence. Okay. Remember what abuse is, remember what violence is. It is not until someone slaps you that the person is violent towards you. Moving on, I explained that there are other kinds of abuse, namely social network abuse. If this kind of abuse comes from friends, people who are not close to you, but who somehow abuse you because they believe that you're their friend, or because they are your friend, or because you hold them close, they are very close to you, even though they are not your family members. So abuse can come from social network. Social network can also be workplace. Okay, it's a social setting, even though it's a professional setting. So abuse can also happen in the workplace. You can have a toxic boss who is, just who is narcissistic, who wants to make life a living hell for you. So bear in mind that there is social network abuse. Lastly, the one that I think I will find very interesting in this series is religious abuse. Religious abuse. This is the type of abuse that comes from religious people. People who, because they think they know God more than you do, they begin to make you feel like you don't know God or you're an unbeliever. These people weaponize God. And I'm going to go deeper from next week. So from next week, I'll talk more about religious abuse. But today, to cap things or to wrap things up, I would explain a little bit more about social network and what family abuse. And then next week we'll talk about religious abuse. Family abuse. Let's talk about family abuse a little bit more, and then next week we'll talk about social network abuse. And then in the last weekend of the month, hopefully, we'll talk about religious abuse. Family abuse is not limited, like I said, to the abuse that comes from a husband to his wife or a wife to a husband. Family abuse can come from a mother to a child. And a lot of times we fail to recognize that when parents start, when parents abuse their children, one way or the other, they either create narcissistic children or codependent children. When you live with a parent who is abusive or narcissistic, for example, a narcissistic parent abusive behavior can recreate another narcissistic child, or can then create a codependent child. Let me explain. You have a mother or a father who does not see anything good in what you do, who will yell at you, who will shout at you at every little thing. For example, maybe you're a lefty, and then if you carry a bowl with your left hand, or you're doing anything with your left hand, you don't know how to do it. And then the parents start to make you feel like, oh, you are such a stupid child, you're so daft, you can't get anything done. And then the parent keeps yelling and keeps saying nasty things to you all the time. You know what that does to a child? Because we're talking about family abuse, remember. What that does to a child is the child begins to withdraw. The child begins to feel unworthy. The child begins to feel unloved. And the result of that is we create broken children. When parents abuse their children, they create broken children. I mean, children whose feelings are ignored, children who cannot talk about their feelings and the way they feel, children who do not have voice, whose voice or opinions do not matter. And so when a child gets to that point where he or she thinks that if I do anything, my parents would abuse me. They will shout at me. I am unworthy. I am not loved. You know what happens? We make this child vulnerable, vulnerable to not just predators from the home front, vulnerable to predators from the outside. And when I say vulnerable to predators, I'm not talking about sexual predators alone. I'm also talking about emotional predators, psychological predators, physical abusers, sexual abusers, emotional abusers, gaslighters. When a parent, because of their insecurities, or because they had a terrible day, or because life is difficult, finances bad, or something is not going right in the life of that parent, and you feel that your children is the channel through which you can express your vulnerabilities or let out your pain, or you make your children your channel, the channel of, like the shield for whatever you're going through. I mean, you project your pain, your insecurities on your kids. When you do this, the result is we end up creating children who are abusive. We end up creating children who are, narcissistic. And if we do not recreate those monsters in our children, we end up creating children who are codependent. And when we create children who are codependent, who feel that they need to keep quiet, their feelings don't matter, they don't need to speak for themselves, guess what? These kids would most of the time attract narcissistic children, other narcissists into their lives in form of partners or spouses or friends or bosses or religious leaders. So we need to be careful. And the root of this problem is from the family. And that is why I'm going to be emphasizing and discussing. That's why I'm starting rather this series on the types of abuse with family abuse and family violence. It is very, very important that as parents, we understand that our children are not the reasons for whatever is going wrong in our lives. Do not blame your children for making a wrong choice in a partner. When you say things like, biba be no sheri niye, biye no sheri niye, omo shi, omo rada, omo bi babe. When you say things like that to your children, you're making them feel guilty for whatever it is that is going wrong in your life. And when you say such things, guess what? You will create monsters as children, or you create children who will become messiahs, who would accommodate monsters into their lives, and somehow the pattern of abuse would continue. The pattern of abuse would continue. So when we talk about domestic violence or family abuse, we should stop thinking too much, or thinking that the only form of family violence or family abuse there is intimate partner violence. People who marry terrible or toxic people, they did not marry these toxic people from heaven. They met those toxic people here on earth, and they attracted these toxic people into their lives because of some level, because of the void in their lives, or the trauma they are yet to process, or some abuse that they are struggling with. And because of that, they either become toxic people or they attract toxic people into their lives. And that is why today we have several codependents and several narcissists out there. It is not because someone chose to want to become a narcissist. Someone become narcissistic because of the abuse that they have also suffered from their childhood. Maybe their fathers or their mothers. Something must have gone wrong somewhere. And it always starts from the family. When we have broken children, we end up having broken adults. So, broken child, broken adult. Broken child, what? Broken adult. Broken child, broken adult. And that is why today we see people get into relationships with people in, work relationship or social network relationship or marriage, because they have certain baggages in their lives that they are carrying, and they feel that marriage is going to solve the problem, or a relationship with someone will solve it, or getting intimate with someone would help them process those trauma, those feelings, those pain. No, getting into a relationship or a marriage will not heal you of your trauma, will not save you from your pain. or whatever it is you might be going through. You need to unclog your life. How do you start? And I'm going to be sharing 3 action steps, or maybe 2 or 3 action steps, actionable steps you can take today. The first thing is, who are you before life happened to you? Or who did you think you were before life happened to you? I mean, before you started having difficulty, you got a divorce, or you lost a job, you lost that contract. Who are you before life? Who were you, or who do you think you were before life happened to you? When you know who you were, what I'm saying in essence is, what was your past like? What was your childhood like? Okay? When you know what your childhood was like, it is easy, and it is easier for you to unclog your life. It is easier for you to know what your foundation was, or what your foundation is, and what the problem is with your foundation. And that way you are able to actually go from not being mindful to a state of mindfulness where you know that there is something wrong with me. There is something wrong with my foundation, and I need to heal. I need to unclog my life. I need to clean my mess. I need to take care of myself. Marriage will not take care of your mess. Your relationship with your boss will not take care of your mess. That you have a better job that pays you well will not take care of your mess. That you have kids will not take care of your mess. That you're a deacon in a church will not take care of your mess. That you got a promotion, that those papers are published and you're getting recognition, that you're a renowned social justice advocate, or whatever you are, will not take care of your mess. What will take care of your mess is you sitting with yourself and asking yourself, who was I before life happened to me? Or who do I think I was or I am before I got to this point in my life? What was your childhood like? Think about your childhood and ask yourself very critical questions. Did you live with a narcissistic father or mother? Did you live with a narcissistic mom and then you had a codependent father? Did you live with a narcissistic father and then you have a narcissistic mother and then you have a codependent dad? Or even if you were not raised by your parent, did you live with a grandmother or a grandfather who was abusive? Know what was broken, like what was broken in your childhood. Once you know what was broken in your childhood, once you know what was wrong from your very foundation, it is very likely that you're going to be able to move from wherever it is you're coming from to where you need to be, wherever it is that your problem started. And then you know that what are the things that you're using to cover up your marriage, your partner, your spouse, your kids, your job, your promotion, the study abroad opportunity. You need to first know what is broken. And then when you know what the missing link in your childhood, then you can identify how to begin the process to healing. The next step you need to take is know what you're using to fill the void right now. What are you using to fill the void from your childhood? Or what guilt are you carrying into your adulthood that is making you do what you do, or take what you take, or tolerate the things that are happening around you? So, for instance, maybe from your childhood, you lived with a narcissistic mother who saw nothing good in you, and then you feel that it is your responsibility to what? To save the world. And because you think that it's your responsibility to save the world, that the next thing is, if people abuse you at work, if people abuse you in your local church, if you have abusive friend within your social network, you suddenly think and feel that because of the fact that there's a missing link, it is your responsibility to accept every kind of behavior, every kind of attitude that people project. It's not your responsibility to claim people's mess. The mess from your childhood is enough for you to deal with and begin to unclog your life, and do not in the name of trying to be there for people or trying to make sure that you do not continue a pattern from your childhood. Say, for example, You tolerated your parents because they were narcissistic, or your mom or father, and then you feel that you should tolerate a narcissistic boss, or should tolerate a leader in your local church or in your mosque who is narcissistic, or you feel you should tolerate narcissistic friends. You just feel that your life, your destiny is to just tolerate people. Set boundaries. You do not tolerate things because you feel that people would not be happy with you. Set clear boundaries. First, I said, go back to your childhood and understand what is missing. Were you raised by a toxic father or mother that just makes you feel that you're terrible? Or were you raised by a codependent mother who saw nothing wrong in what you do? The journey to healing begins with you. And healing, you must heal. And you must do that right now, from knowing what the root cause of your problem is. What do I mean by the root cause? If you had a parent who saw nothing good in you, begin to see the good in yourself, and do not tolerate people, not even your children if you now have kids, not even your partner if you're now married, not even your boyfriend or girlfriend if you are dating, not even your boss if you are working, because you feel that if that happened to you in your childhood, that it's okay. It is not okay. It is not okay. You need to unclog your life. You need to unclog your life. It is not okay to accept toxicity. Or perhaps you are not the type that accept toxicity. Maybe you lived with a parent who would give you everything you wanted as a child, who saw nothing bad in you, who always does things to make you happy. And then you now feel on top of the world, and the world is yours. Hello, ẹ pẹ̀lẹ́ o, uncle narcissist, ẹ̀yin náà nu, anti narcissist, ẹ kú iṣẹ́ Olúwa o. Meaning that if you feel you were entitled to doing things the way you wanted it as a child, you cannot have or carry that sense of entitlement into adulthood. Being an adult comes with responsibility, and you must grow up. Growing up means that you cannot talk to people anyhow. Growing up means you cannot be toxic. Growing up means you cannot recreate a pattern of behavior that you cannot continue to behave the way you used to behave as a child. If you had people in your childhood who tolerated you, who allowed you to mess up with them, you cannot think that everybody out there in your future, in your workplace, in your social circle, in your religious space would tolerate that type of toxicity. So whether you're codependent or you're a narcissist, whether you are the one who people always abuse or the one who always abuse people, you need to work on yourself. You need to work on yourself. You need to work on yourself. And the journey to doing that starts with first identifying the pattern from your childhood. Second, identifying that there is a problem and now being mindful enough to doing the work. Third, get counseling. Get therapy. Now, a lot of times it is very expensive. I'm not even sure there's a system in many African communities right now that allows for people to go through therapy. There is self-therapy. There is self-therapy. You can work yourself. You can work on yourself by yourself. You can heal yourself by yourself with God, because everything you need to work on yourself has been provided to you by God, provided unto you by God, by Eledumare. Everything you need to heal. And to heal, you need to begin the work. You don't need a fancy therapy. You don't need to pay dollars or a lot of money. If you have access to YouTube, if you have access to Google, if you have access to this page, the Left-Handers International Organization's Facebook page or the Instagram page, these are the tools that you can begin to use to heal. These are resources. Yes, it will cost you data, but at least this is something to start with. So if you're watching me right now and you think that this information is helpful, You can also continue this conversation in your space. You can also begin to repost this. You can also begin to share this knowledge. Invite people to follow us on Instagram. Invite people to join this Facebook community. Let the conversation continue, because healing we must, and together we must heal. And these communities have been created for Africans to help us walk through our pain, our trauma, to the destination that is rightfully yours, which is a place devoid of toxicity. And together we can make that work. Yes, we might not have structures put in place by our leaders, but we can recreate those structures, you and I, by starting off conversations in your local church, in your mosque, in your religious center, in your shrine, wherever it is you find yourself. Let the conversation continue. Brethren, let the conversation continue. Let the conversation continue. Maybe it will be you choosing to, join us in the movement to publish more copies of the Unseen Scars of Stigma. The conversation has to continue one way or the other. Join us in this bid, in this conversation. Join us, and together we can do this. Thank you for watching today's episode, and I'll see you next week. Abundance is here, there is no lack, and today is the day to begin the journey to healing. See you later.